Our next speaker holds a significant place in my heart as well as in the movement for genuine and progressive equality. In 1990, this man wrote the first mainstream media article that criticised feminism and itemised the issues facing modern men in our society. That article was called Bad Mouthing and was published in the Times, much to the consternation of the feminist collective, including some of the Times women journalists. I recommend searching for the title on AVFM, where you can find it today. The predictable backlash did nothing to dissuade this courageous man from publishing his treatise 2 years later, No More Sex War. A marvellous book whose critique of feminism is irrefutable, and indeed never was refuted by the feminists who opted instead to speculate on our writer's sexual prowess, erroneously I have no doubt, and whose policy suggestions remain radical. It cost this man almost everything. He was bankrupted, lost his home, and his son, thanks to No More Sex War, which I'm pleased to inform you can be purchased as part of the Sexual and Politics collection on Kindle. I do recommend that you read it. A tribeless libertarian, to my mind the true legacy of the free-spirited 60s and 70s, please welcome Neil Linden.
And thanks to Elizabeth and to Natty for organising this, and for Vincent. I think Vincent had a major role too. I stand before you almost naked and speechless because yesterday I came down from Scotland, and as I was getting on the plane, I thought I'd get my tablet out of my case. And I reached into the front pocket of the case and found a novel there that I'd never bought. And this was not my case. And, something had gone wrong quite clearly. When I got to Gatwick Airport, I managed to find out whose case it was. This guy was in Malaga. My case was in Scotland. So you go, what's in that case? Well, there was the tablet, there was my, toiletries, socks, pants, blum, blum, blum. Also, there was my speech for today. So the guy I was staying with last night helped me, and we got it off the cloud where it had been stored. And I've got it in my hand, except for the first page. So I'm going to have to improvise that. And as far as I remember, what I wanted to say was, very much as Mike was saying, last year at this meeting, I was trying to suggest that what we needed was for women to raise their voices and to take the lead in advancing the cause of men. And that, I'm glad to say, I believe is happening. More and more women are voicing their concerns and their opposition and their concerns about men, and that's absolutely great. And I now want, somewhat implausibly, but it's connected very much with what Rick was saying to us, I want to advance the idea that the interests of children can lead to change for men. And thank you. Thank you. Oh, great. Thank you. Well, I'm glad you see it that way, because I thought it was a rather implausible proposition, but I'm going to give it a go. And it begins. Earlier this year, I got an email from a friend who is himself a Mackenzie friend to fathers in the family courts, and who has himself been separated from his own children, as I was. And naturally, if you've been through this ordeal, which is just about the worst thing that can happen to a human being, short of execution or imprisonment, in my view, you often fail to see the sunny side of things. But on that day, my friend was, as he said in his email, and this is what he said, at a especially low point today. Yesterday, I had to tell another Mackenzie friend client that he has no chance of getting caught to order the mother of his child to send him for Christmas and birthdays. back to what Rick was saying, even for part of the day. He's been to court twice on this issue, and his final hearing in his latest bid has already come and gone, although his case has one more technical hearing. I end up having to do therapy with these guys, and it's so desperate. Then this morning, I hear on the news that Emma Watson has given £1 million to the Me Too vigilante cause, which to me is a nutcase movement, bringing down men in power using past lovers and acquaintances when reconsidering historical sexual encounters. I ask myself, why are men so totally crap at organising themselves compared to women? Okay, that's the email. Well, I'm sure most of us in this room will have asked ourselves that question 1,000,000 times, because nothing is more baffling and vexing and trying and tedious about the position of men in our time than the failure of men in general to recognise the inequalities and the disadvantages that men do share, males do share, I should say, and their incredible passivity and acquiescence towards the totalitarian intolerance of our time, which condemns them, as we've been hearing from Mike and others, to yet more inequality and disadvantage. Why can't men see this? Why don't they resist? These truly are among the most galling questions of our age. But I want to argue it isn't entirely true to say. It does not follow that, as my friend said, men are totally crap at organising themselves. It actually depends on what and for whom men are organising themselves. In point of fact, men are extraordinarily, totally brilliant at organising themselves for the sake of a cause other than themselves. They have unique, unsurpassed, natural gifts at subordinating their own interests and egos for the sake of a group, a tribe, a gang, a company, a school, an army. Nothing bears this out more vividly than stories from the First World War, and I'm very grateful to Natty and Elizabeth for making sure that we wear this badge today to commemorate the First World War. And at Easter this year, I went with my family to the Somme battlefields to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the death of my own uncle, who was killed at the age of 18 in 1918 in battle in the Somme. And we toured many of the famous sites of that area. I particularly wanted my children to see the memorial park at Beaumont-Hamel, which commemorates the slaughter of the Newfoundland Regiment. Is this familiar to anybody here, please? Yeah?
Turn up the collar.
Yeah?
Turn up the collar.
Yeah. Oh, turn up my collar. Turn up my collar.
Newfoundland's going into battle.
Oh, right. Yes, right. Sorry, I thought you were telling me to turn up my collar. If you've been there, you'll know that the German trenches were like half a field away, like a frisbee throw. From the trenches where the Newfoundlanders went over the top to their deaths on that day. Of the 780 men of that regiment who advanced, 670 had been mown down by machine gun fire within 15 minutes. Only 68 of those guys were available for roll call the following day. It's impossible to stand in those trenches and consider their actions without asking, why did they go? Why did they obey the orders? Why didn't they say, as you would expect many people today to say, listen, mate, I'm not doing this. There's no way I'm doing this. You can shoot me here and now, but I'm not going, because that's pure suicide. Well, actually, the reason why men today can't see that their interests are being screwed is more of a mystery than why the Newfoundlanders went forward that day, because we know why they went forward. So many men left letters from the trenches about their feelings and their motives, that we know what they were thinking. And they make it clear that they were devoted, first of all, to their mates. They didn't want to let their comrades down. They advanced into certain death out of loyalty to each other. Now, God did come into it, of course, and king and country, and the sacred cause of justice, and all the inscriptions on the grave of the unknown warrior. But most of all, their courage was motivated by the unspoken desire to be true to their fellows in arms. And this sense of unity with other men comes so naturally to men that you have to imagine that it descends to us from our primeval ancestors, from the hunting group, perhaps, or somehow that it's in our DNA in that way. Because you see it so frequently. You see it in the rowing 8, for instance, which is completely unified as one. You see it in a rugby scrum. You see it in a miners' brass band, a male voice choir. You see it wherever guys work physically together in crews, whether it's bin men or kitchen staff of a top restaurant. My stepson, for instance, did his apprenticeship at Gordon Ramsay's restaurant in Claridge's, which I promise you must be one of the hardest, most severe forms of occupation that you can have in contemporary life. And at the end of it, when he left, he wept because he felt he was losing his family. That's the kind of connection that men can have with each other. So men have this capacity for selfless service as a group. And they have it in ways in which it's hard to think of any equivalent among women. Yes, of course, women can row an 8. Of course they can. They can form a rugby scrum or a choir, of course, no argument. But it actually never carries the same kind of conviction and unity as it does when men do that kind of thing. Or go over the top at Beaumont-Hamel. I mean, is it conceivable? Can one imagine that women collectively would have behaved as those men did? It seems to me to be hard to imagine, or impossible to imagine. Now, what's this got to do with the subject of concern here today, the position of males? Well, now we come to the nub of it. We need to find some way to harness this amazing power and strength of men acting in unison and direct it to bring about the revolution in our age which is required if the feminist orthodoxy is ever to be brought down. And how is that to be done? I don't have a complete answer, you'll be amazed to know. But I feel I have found a partial answer, having thought about it for 30 years. What is the one thing that a man will suffer any indignity or hardship, will give his life if necessary for? It's not, in the first place, God, king, country, sacred cause of justice, not today. It's his children. We see this all the time with men in family courts who simply won't give in, won't give up, despite the endless humiliations and reverses to which they're subjected. Kipling's lines, terribly cliched, but they actually do apply to those guys. If you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they're gone, and so hold on when there is nothing in you except the will which says to them, hold on. That's those guys. That's those people in the family courts, because they have no chance, and they know they've got no chance. They're a bit like the guys in the Newfoundland Regiment. They have no chance, but they just are going to keep going. So many of these men surrender. Is that right? They don't surrender. Not just their money. Oh, right. They surrender not just their money. They don't surrender. They don't surrender. Many of these men surrender not just their money and their jobs and their homes and their prospects in that process, but they actually are driven mad by it and kill themselves. A fact which is known to everybody who works with fathers in the family courts. Yes, it is, of course, never even addressed by the feminist-dominated media, still less given any sympathy. And those are the guys on whom I'm relying to advance into the jaws of death on behalf of, or even behind, their children. In the last few months, I've been working on an idea to mount a class action in the courts of the United Kingdom, suing the United Kingdom government for compensation and for damages for the policies of the family courts of which Rick was speaking so brilliantly, describing that woozle. The policies that have estranged so many tens, hundreds of thousands, millions of children from their fathers over the last 20 years. The theory behind this action, which I owe largely to a conversation with Vincent McGovern, as a matter of fact, is that any action on behalf of men, of the fathers who have suffered injustice through the family court system, is doomed to failure. Partly because, where's Will? Where's Will Stiles? Is he still here? More failure for you. It's doomed to failure, partly because men can't be asked to act in their own interests, and partly because the whole system, as Rick was describing, is united against them. So those are the facts we have to face. However, as Vincent pointed out, it would be a different matter if an action was focused on the harm done to the children in this process, and if it was the children themselves, as adults now, who were telling the system and the world that they were harmed. That approach gets around every objection and hurdle. Men can get behind it because it's not about them, and the feminist establishment can't deride it as the work of whinging inadequate men, because it's the children speaking. Now, personally, I'm motivated in this ambition by an unassuageable rage over the monstrous injustices that were inflicted on my own poor son between 1991 and 1996, which Elizabeth kindly touched on in her introduction, when he was forcibly removed from my care and placed in the care of a chronic alcoholic and wholly unfit mother by the Scottish courts. Even if the effort takes the rest of my life, even if it kills me, I am going to do everything I can to get justice for him and for the 2.5 million kids who have been separated from their fathers since the Children Act of 1989. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So if you are in that position, if you're one of those kids, get in touch with me. If you're the father of those kids, get in touch with me. If you know of kids in that position, I mean adults, get in touch with me. I've put together a team, it's a growing team. We have a figurehead in the figure of a 19-year-old young woman who was herself separated from her father, who's going to take the lead in developing this as a national campaign. I'm very confident that she can speak very well for it. We just need more people to join in. Then we're getting legal advice at the moment, but we need more people. So please get in touch. Thank you very much. Sure.